because mercury is the most toxic, non-radioactive material on the planet.
But let me ask you this. So, how does the patient know there's a safe way to take mercury out of their fillings, and then the dentist that they're going to doesn't know that?
It's a good question.
I
The word gets out there now. What we've just came out with, which is really, I think, it's going to really help get the word out. Is we came out something called SMART, SMART, like the word SMART,
Right.
and it stands for Safe Mercury Amalgam Removal Technique. Okay, and that's what the IAOMT I told you before, the .org. That's the technique that we use to remove the mercury safely, and so we fully protect you, the patient, and us, the doctor, and the staff. It's very, very important because, listen, a lot of the staff members are young females that are childbearing age, and you know how toxic mercury can be to a fetus or to to the mother.
Welcome to the Hol-Truth Podcast with Jon Levine, and I am here with my biological dentist. His name's Dr. Mark Berkowitz, and he is going to introduce himself and his credentials because he's the man.
Nice to see you, John, and I've been treating this family for a number of years, and I've been practicing this is my 44th year of practice, NYU graduate, and got into biological dentistry kind of roundabout because when one of my children was about 7, 8 years old, she started having hives all over her body. And, I was traditional like everybody else, and I didn't know what to do about it. I went to traditional doctors, and they basically couldn't help her. They kept giving her more antihistamines and more drugs, and she kept getting more hives and getting worse. She was up all night crying, and it was a mess as a parent, and we went to the, quote, the biggest and best physician, and he wasn't able to. He said, we can do some experimental therapy. And I said, there's no way you're experimenting on my kid, I said to myself. And so I walked out of there and say, I got to find another solution. And I asked my wife, and my sister-in-law had a doctor who was a Chinese doctor in Manhattan. We went to his name, Dr. Shen, it was a long time ago. And in 1 month, he looked at her tongue, took a pulse. All this stuff was new to me. He said, something with her circulation was off, and we could get her better. And I said, how long will it take, doctor? And he said, about a month. And sure enough, a month later, we're mixing up these teas and herbs, and a month later, she's all better. And that's what changed my life. That was the major event for me that got me over the hump from traditional to the holistic side. And then I started looking about what I was doing at mercury and other things. And that's how I got into biological dentistry. As I got myself more educated, we have an organization called the International Academy. I want the people to know about this. This is an important organization. The International Academy of Oral Medicine and Toxicology. It's called the IAOMT for short. So if you go in the website, it's IAOMT.org. And anywhere across the country, if you go on the website, look for an accredited biological dentist, and you could find the biological dentist. We are the biggest organization in the world. We have probably about 800 members. I'm on the board of directors. I'm in charge of the mentor program, and I help with the accreditation. So I'm involved with the organization for a number of years. And I was always interested. I got involved with people like Dr. Robert O. Young, who wrote the pH Miracle books, and Hippocrates down in Florida. I got involved with the owners there, and I got involved with diet and pH. And so I learned a lot. I read the books, and I started learning this stuff. And so I got really interested in the medical end of things, too. And about 7, 8 years ago, there's a program through one of my friends, Dr. Malika, who gives a program to dentists to obtain their become certified naturopathic physicians. And I got my degree and became a certified naturopathic physician. And when I gave my dissertation, it was on nutrition and supplements. They came running over to me afterwards. That was amazing. Can you teach this? And so I started teaching. I did a half a day, and now they have me teaching a full day. So I'm on faculty of the school, and we have it's kind of a small program. There's about 12 doctors. that run twice a year, and I do a full day teaching, and it's just a blast. I really enjoy it. It's like a break, and we get to talk and go through all the different nutritional things. Also, in the late 90s, I got involved with a doctor that gave a lecture on homeopathic medicine. His name was Dr. Luke DeShepper, who's a famous homeopathic doctor. And he sent me a thing one day and said, "Hey, Mark, would you like to take a class on homeopathic medicine?" And I said, "Sure, what do I got to lose? I'd like to learn new stuff." So I took a class, and 4 or 5 years later, I have a classical homeopathic degree. So I might be the only person in the country with those 3 degrees. And as I said, so it's kind of interesting. That's my background as a doctor. I live the life.
You practice what you preach.
Practice what I preach. I was talking to you earlier. You told me how you have your green drinks, and people kind of make fun of you and stuff like that. And the same thing, I'd come with my green drinks, of dehydrated greens, and drinking alkaline drinks and alkaline water, and
sure.
And people make fun of you, but
so biological dentistry. So here's what we're going to talk about, because we talked about it on the phone. What are we going to talk about? Biological dentistry.
What is it?
Ozone therapy,
right.
Mercury removal, doing it the right way.
Right.
There's a certain way to do it. Fluoride. I definitely want to talk about fluoride. But getting back to biological dentistry,
Yes.
looking at the whole picture, the whole...
Right. So biological dentistry is, as I tell my patients, it's not just a one-issue thing. Most people think as biological dentistry, it has to do with mercury removal, which of course is a big chunk of it. But biological dentistry is every aspect of everything we do. So, for example, we safely remove mercury fillings, but we also look at other toxic materials in the office. So we will not use any fluoridated stuff, which I think is toxic. I personally believe it's toxic, so I won't use any fluorides. I won't use fluoride treatments. We'll talk later about other forms of fluoride in the office. When we have someone come in, let's say we have a chemically sensitive patient, right, which is a common thing, or someone says, "Hey, you're changing out all these crowns and fillings for me and making natural things." We get rid of the metals in crowns, because most people don't know that they have a crown. It looks white on the outside, but the actual under part of the crown is metal. And the metals they use are kind of not very safe. Most of them are things like nickel, which is an allergen, and beryllium, which is a carcinogen, and galadium, and a whole bunch of other metals you never heard of. And that's what's used. Some of them are even, I read an article that 35-40% are actually sent out overnight to China and come back. People have no idea this is going on. They don't have to let the patients know about this. And sometimes they do, but sometimes they don't. And so they're getting super toxic. They do it for pennies on the dollar. So the lab makes money because they don't have to do the work. They get it back, and boom. So that's what's going on behind the scene.
Sure.
So we will only use non-metallic, non-toxic materials. Everything has metals in, but everybody gets the gist of metals being metals that we commonly know, because even these so-called porcelain has natural lead in it. So everything technically has a metal in it. What I tell the patients is not so much if it's in there, does it get out? Does it escape out of the thing into your body?
So let's set the table here for a second. So it's probably been a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago, I had mercury in several teeth, and you removed the mercury.
Right.
So let's talk about the process, the smart method process that you did on me and what you do on everyone else. How do you extract the mercury out of my tooth so it doesn't get in the office?
Safely.
Safely.
Okay.
Because I saw that machine,
Right.
and you brought a machine over, and this was like...
Look like a big vacuum cleaner.
It looked like a big vacuum cleaner,
Right.
and all sorts of craziness was going on around me.
So I know a lot of dentists will try to, because they don't want to lose their patients, and if a patient comes to me, and it's funny, they'll come in, they'll say, I love my doctor. He's been my family dentist for this is true, happens all the time, 3 generations, and I'm waiting for the punchline, because sooner or later they're going to say, but and the but is he wants to put a mercury filling in me, or he's going to take it out without protecting me. Right. That's usually what I'll hear from the patients, and the patients are pretty well read up on it. And so the patients want the mercury out because mercury is the most toxic, non-radioactive material on the planet.
But let me ask you this. So how does the patient know there's a safe way to take mercury out of their fillings, and then the dentist that they're going to doesn't know that?
It's a good question. The word gets out there. Now, we what we've just came out with, which is really, I think it's going to really help get the word out, is we came out something called SMART, S-M-A-R-T, like the word SMART.
Right.
And it stands for Safe Mercury Amalgam Removal Technique. Okay, and that's what the IAOMT, I told you before, the .org, that's the technique that we use to remove the mercury safely. And so we fully protect you, the patient, and us, the doctor, and the staff. It's very, very important because, listen, a lot of the staff members are young females that are childbearing age, and you know how toxic mercury can be to a fetus or to to the mother and to anybody that's sitting there across from us.
Yeah.
Most offices, if we go in there with there's a way to measure mercury in the air. There's a technology where you take something called the Jerome analyzer, which will measure the mercury in the air and
right?
analyze it. Yeah, I always thought, like going back to the 9/11, when one of the things they kind of never tell us about is that in 9/11, think about all those light bulbs, fluorescent bulbs that had all that mercury vapor in it. All that got released at the same time.
Yeah,
mercury is 1,000 times more toxic than the other stuff they were breathing in.
Right.
So that's a big part of that toxic plume that they had. But getting back to the mercury issue.
So you promised me you used the SMART method on me, right?
Yeah. So
you weren't upset with me and used a different method?
No.
It was the SMART method?
I think I took care of you properly. Yeah,
so that was that big vacuum that came close
smart,
to me.
Well, there's a bunch of things.
It looks like ET.
So there's a big vacuum with a HEPA filter, and it looks like the vacuum on your dryer in the house. And it goes right underneath your chin.
I know.
And we have a raincoat, which is called, we used to call it in dentistry a rubber dam, but we don't use rubber or latex. And this is very important because most dentists that try to do this without being trained, they will use latex. The problem with latex is mercury goes through latex readily, very easily. We use nitrile, which is nitrile is the substitute for latex. Let's say if you're allergic to latex.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's a much better barrier. And sometimes too, what we'll do is we'll put a sulfur cream because sulfur captures mercury on the raincoat, on the nitrile raincoat, and literally the tooth is sticking out of this raincoat so that it's outside your body. We have this big suction, this dental air vac pulling in all the vapors because the vapors is what's dangerous. It's not the pieces. We'll talk a little bit later about the different types of mercury, but it's the vapors in this case that is the dangerous part.
So correct me if I'm wrong. So the mercury, if it's in your teeth, it's kind of always active, but when you're drinking like hot coffee, that's when, or hot chocolate, whatever it may be, that's when it starts to release throughout your body. So obviously you think, okay, it's in my tooth, no big deal. Well, this is a holistic podcast. You're a holistic dentist, a biological dentist. It goes throughout your body and affects everything.
Well, just first off to say that if you want to educate yourself some more on this, there are over 800 studies on our website, on the IAOMT.org website, that you can, if you want to just see if this is true. And the long story short is the more mercury fillings you have, the more mercury you have in your body is proportional. That's about as best that I can sum it up, a synopsis of that.
And they're all on the website?
They're all on the website, yeah. And so as far as the mercury itself goes, even at rest, mercury is coming off these fillings. Exactly what you said, John, when you have something hot, every 10 degrees, it doubles the evaporation rate. When you grind your teeth, you brush your teeth, you chew food, you increase the release of the mercury vapors.
Yeah.
And just because the filling in is very important for the patients to understand this. Patients will come and say, well, doc, I've had this filling in for 30 years, so I guess there's no more mercury in it. Totally not true. 30 years later, it's almost exactly the same output as the day it was put in. So there's never any end to this until they're actually removed. And you think about this, we're putting this toxic material a couple inches away from our brain. Right now, the European Union, which is like 28, 29 countries, voted to stop using mercury like in another year or two on most of their population. We have Sweden, Germany, and a whole bunch of other countries presently that are not using amalgam. Unfortunately, this country, I think, I don't know what's going on, but the mercury issue is just being pushed aside for now.
And you can see videos of the mercury. So before I went in to have the mercury removed by you, I did the research on it, and there's videos. And you can see when it's like when you brush your teeth or you drink coffee, you could see how it increases. You could see the smoke not the smoke, but the mercury vapor is just unbelievable.
So in reference to what you just said, here's something that I would like the public to check out and see. there's something on our website. You can also check it out on YouTube. It's called the Smoking Gun Video.
That's the video.
Okay, that's the video you're talking about.
That's the video.
So that's Dr. Kennedy, who's on the board of directors with myself.
Okay, let's say it again. The smoking
gun video.
The smoking gun video.
Right? And what he's done is he takes a extracted tooth with like a 30-year-old filling. Now, the problem with this is it's invisible, normal to the eye. So you can't see the mercury vapors coming off your teeth, right?
Right, correct.
And most people, by the way, most people don't even know their fillings are mercury. You know, over half the country has no idea that your silver, quote, silver fillings have no mercury. They think silver is just silver. Well, it's misnamed because there's only 30% silver, but there's 50% mercury. It really should be called mercury fillings, but they don't want to call that because they'd scare the public, so they call it silver fillings. So that's what's going on with this. But there's a tremendous release of this mercury from these fillings throughout your life. And so the smoking gun video, so what he does, he takes a fluorescent background and puts what you're talking about, and he puts it behind the filling. Then when he extracts the tooth and he holds up, and what that does, it makes the vapors visible to the human eye.
Yeah, that is the video I saw.
And if that doesn't blow you away, nothing else
will.
will.
It blew me away.
And said, that is going to my body 24/7, 365 through my whole life?
Yeah.
Yes, that's the answer to that. And what he does, he takes an eraser, if you remember, he takes an eraser and rubs it.
Yeah.
That's the equivalent of you chewing or biting or grinding or taking hot tea and hot coffee. It increases the evaporation rate.
Yeah.
And you're seeing these vapors coming out, and the smoke is going really crazy. And that is as good as it gets as far as showing people what's going on. And you think about it, we put this stuff literally an inch or two away from our brain. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
So what are we using instead? So you took the mercury out of my tooth.
Okay, so now let's talk a little bit. We get back to like functions of biological dentistry. We really get to finish that up. So one of the other things that we look at is something called the biocompatibility test. So let's say you come in, we were saying before, if someone's a chemically sensitive patient, you come in and you want to make sure that not only is something not toxic, of course, you don't want anything toxic being put into, but make sure that you're not allergic to it, that it's safe for you. Right? That's very important because if you're putting something that you're allergic to, it's going to be bad for your health. So the test does is they basically have a blood test. They take your blood and they test every dental material against your blood for an allergy response.
Where can you get these tests? At
a biological dentist.
So
biologists, I don't actually do the test. I'll give them the test, and they have to go to a lab. Usually they get a hard time, Quest or LabCorp, because they don't make the money on the test, and it's not their test.
Oh, wow.
But I'll usually have someone that I know that draws blood, a phlebotomist that I use that will come to the home locally. Or a lot of times if I write a script for the outpatient of a hospital, if I write a prescription, please draw blood for blah, blah, blah test, they'll do it. So usually we get it done. The only area that they seem to have that they all come here because for some reason there's a problem in New York State, they won't do it. New York State has this crazy law, so I don't know what it is, but they won't do the testing in New York State.
I didn't realize that. So if I want to know what products I'm allergic to when it comes to dentistry, you'll prescribe
that test. And this test is you get about 40, 50 pages back. It's every material. There's a lot of materials in dentistry.
What I'm allergic to.
Oh, well, what it does is it goes through every material, and it has an S or NS. Not satisfactory or satisfactory.
Oh, wow.
And I go through it with a highlight pen. I just had another patient's coming in shortly, and I'll go through it and make sure that I have at least some of those materials that are safe for them in there. Because if I don't have the material and I know you're coming in, guess what? I'm ordering it for you.
Right.
And sometimes I have to do that. There might be some people that have certain allergies that they require a material that is maybe not something I use. Now, there are patterns to this. Most of the patients don't have to do this. The patterns are a material will come up compatible 85, 90% of the time frequently, but still, you don't know if you're that 10%.
Right.
Okay.
Well, I'm allergic to penicillin.
Okay. So you asked me about
and you're not probably.
No.
Right?
So
you give it to me, I'm in trouble.
Right. You're in trouble. So you asked me what would happen. What happens is for this test. Patients doing this test. Let's say if they had a problem, they get really, really sick. But what would I normally lose? Let's say you didn't do the test. You asked me about what did we replace the amalgams with. That was the questions started. I just want to get you in that test so you understand what's going on with that.
Sure.
So we use a composite called, it's by a company called VOCO, VOCO, and the composite is Admira Fusion, ADMIRA Fusion, FUSION. The reason this is an important composite is this came out about 2-3 years ago, and as far as I know, it's probably the safest most biocompatible composite we have. And here's the big thing about it. It's the only composite I know of that does not have BPA in it. Okay? So think about it. You put the composite in, even though it's a lot safer than your dental amalgam filling.
Yeah, I was going to say, what is the composite? What is
right,
it?
but what else is in it? Can it still be not as safe as it should be? And that may be the issue, because we all know that BPA is an issue. Now, one of the issues we had was with little children. Now, when BPA is swallowed, especially by a female, we're worried as being what we call a xenoestrogen, adding to the estrogen and putting the girl through menopause and causing them to go through the changes early, which is harmful.
Right.
Okay. So you don't want to have xenoestrogens. And soy, for example, is many people consider that a xenoestrogen, right?
Some people consider
Right.
it.
I'm
Yeah,
just
that's
saying
debatable.
No, that's just an example of something.
It's a troublemaker.
Troublemaker.
It's what I would consider a troublemaker food. So I just eliminate it.
Well, so xenoestrogens can be bad, and so this is the only composite that's admir-fusion, and the patients are so happy I tell them about it, because that's why I say it's not a one-issue thing. There's a lot of other issues in biological dentistry that we utilize that and we look into and toxic materials too. Another example is we're on the fence with root canals, because there's been many studies to show that root canals are all toxic, actually. There's been studies showing that after they extract teeth and they take an independent laboratory, the bacteria is off the chart on pretty much every root canal. I have a friend of mine in Texas that people come from all over the world to him, and he takes out every root canal on almost every patient, and he sends it out to the laboratory, and the group of endodontists in his state went after him, saying, like, why is he doing this? Because they do root canals.
So with the root canal, you're filling in the root, right? So you're taking
the nerve out.
You're taking the nerve out, and you're filling it. So when you're saying it's toxic, I want to make sure that we understand this.
Right.
You're filling in that space.
Well, in the side, the tooth has a root, and the root is solid. Think of it like an ice cream cone with a little hole down the middle.
Right.
That little hole is where the nerve is housed. When the tooth gets infected, bacteria get into the nerve chamber, and they start to kill the nerve. And the bacteria release toxins not only inside this main chamber, but there's also tubules called dental tubules that run at a right angle to the nerve chamber, and also around the surrounding tissue in the periapical or the bone tissue that surrounds the root.
Okay.
And the toxins are there. And so when these are sent out and they're extracted, they look for toxic bacteria. The laboratory they can do DNA testing and look for toxic bacteria. And there was a study done. They found it in 100% of the teeth, and even the ones that were endodontists did that were perfectly done in all aspects. So this is why there's that issue out there. There's a bunch of books being written about it. And listen, I'm not a believer that you take out every root canal in every person. I think that's kind of silly. You're not going to take a young person falls down on the pavement, bangs the front teeth, and the nerve dies, and you're going to say, okay, take out your front 4 teeth now because they need root canal. So there's got to be some common sense in this, and there's a lot of gray in this. But I do think if someone does have a health challenge, and put my naturopathic hat on and they do a consult with me, I think it's something that they have to consider. I've seen many things improve by taking out mercury fillings and root canals, and if you'd like, we can get into the different testing of the charts that we use to look for these problems as a biological dentist.
Do you have the people that have had the mercury removed, like myself, do they come back to you and say, oh my God, I feel so much better now that you removed the mercury? What do people typically say? Do they not know? Is there a difference?
This is a great question. First of all, when you talk about mercury, because now we're getting into the actual mercury, maybe we should get into that first. But I will say this. When you're dealing with mercury, there's 2 aspects of this. There's the removal of the mercury safely from your teeth. But now, what about all the mercury that's in your body? You have to get that out. That's still there. That's not coming out on its own.
Clay.
So, that's right. Well, there's one thing, but we can go through on how we do that as a naturopathic doctor, how I do that for the patient.
Right.
So for me, there's 2 stages. The stage 1 is safely removing mercury from people's teeth.
The safety method.
The safety, they're using the SMART protocol, which is these specialized filters, isolation. I wear a gas mask. The patient wears an oxygen mask. They take something called a zeolite, which is a product that runs through. You take it as usually a spray or drops, and it runs through the body. It doesn't get absorbed, and it pulls in it pulls in positively charged things like heavy metals and mercury, and so it protects you before. So I give the patients that before they start out, and then after the removal is completed, John, then what we usually have them do is we have them take activated charcoal in a cup, rinse with that for 20, 30 seconds, and swallow it. So many times patients are coming from a physician or another health practitioner, and they'll already have them on things. They may have them on chlorella, they may have them on vitamin C, a whole bunch of different things that are out there. Cilantro is another thing that people use to remove mercury.
But here's so activated charcoal takes out everything, right? Like it takes out the nutrients, it takes out the minerals. It just takes out everything.
We're not talking forever here. We're talking a one-time deal. I'm not saying they're staying on activated charcoal. They're just doing it right after their removal, and that's one of the issues too that I have where people go. We can talk about detoxification from mercury itself, and there's a process called chelation that a lot of the patients undergo. But personally, I'm not a big fan because exactly what you just said, it tends to remove everything. So most people that do chelation will have to undergo something called the Myers cocktail, which is basically replacement mineral drip.
Well, that's what. So I use zeolite.
Right.
I pretty much use it every night because before I go to bed, when we're sleeping, there's toxins being released from our brain, and I want the zeolite. And zeolite, by the way, is clay. It's basically clay that binds to the toxins and helps excrete them. Mm-hmm. So that's what I use it for. And then so at night when the toxins are coming out of your brain, it's being picked up by the zeolite, and then in the morning I drink a lot of water, and the idea is I flush it out of my system.
Right, and then that's a good.
So the question that I have is, why not go straight to the zeolite or the clay and just avoid the activated charcoal? Because the way I look at it, we have activated charcoal, but I don't use it just because I don't want it taking out the minerals and the nutrients.
You could. I mean, there's a 10 in a million ways to do it. Actually, it's interesting. In the IAOMT, what most of the doctors do is do 2 times activated charcoal. They do it before and after. I don't like it before because the activated charcoal is black and the fillings are black, so you can't see one from the other. So for me, it's like, why would I want to do this? It just makes my life harder. So I don't like using activated charcoal. But again, anything that you want to use, in the removal process, as far as the treatment, let's say you have your mercury out now, and you say, okay, doctor, now how do I get the mercury out of my body? And I said, personally, I don't like to use chelation because I think that it pulls out a lot of minerals. It can mess up your veins. It's very expensive, and it's very time-consuming because you have to sit there doing IVs for a couple hours each.
Right.
So I'm a big fan. There's a program by a fellow by the name of Dr. Christopher Shade, like window shade, SHADE. And Chris has been an environmental chemist that came out with an amazing program, and he uses things that work with our body, and that's what I like best. So what he uses glutathione. Now, glutathione is the way we detox our heavy metals. It's the main thing in our body that removes our heavy metals, mercury, as well as all the other heavy metals, as well as chemicals, okay? And alpha-lipoic acid, or alpha-lipoic acid, is actually made up of 2 things. It's called R and L form. We call them racemers in chemistry. They're like keys or mirror opposites. Only one is biologically active, the other one won't work. Like the one key will fit on the top, the other's turned around, it won't fit, it won't go in, right? So it makes sense to use the R form, which is the biologically active form. That's the one that we use in the program. And what's going on now in nutrition, this is stuff I teach, is that we use something called liposomes. So liposomes are almost 100% absorbed because a lot of patients are sick.
Like liposomal?
Liposomal,
like gets into the tissues?
Right, exactly. So liposomal, lipo means shell, and cell means fat, And so they get into the tissue. It's basically, it's a very small particle, like an angstrom, which is like the smallest particle that you can't see. You need an electron microscope to see it. And think of it like a marble. And in this marble, they put whatever material you're trying to absorb. And because of its size being so small, it literally gets pulled in as you spray it and gets pulled in through your cheeks and your tissue and doesn't have to be absorbed through your digestive system. So even if you have a leaky gut, you're still going to absorb the liposome.
Right.
And that's what's cool about it. And Dr. Shade's, his company is called QuicksilverScientific.com.
Okay.
And his liposomes were rated the best of all the ones out there. So when you think about it, what you want to do is help your body remove the heavy metals by the way your body's able, because our bodies are the smartest of them all, right? So to me, it makes sense to work within the confines of what our body does. But the problem is that our bodies are overwhelmed. There's
toxins.
There's too much mercury, too many toxins coming in, and the body doesn't have enough glutathione and R-lipoic to go around. So what the program really does is it provides the body with liposomal glutathione, liposomal R-lipoic acid, vitamin C, which is also very important in the detoxification process, okay? So basically you're adding more glutathione to the body with a liposome, which in turn helps you get rid of some of this stuff. That's what's important about it. And then there's something called Clearway cofactors, which is a little tablet that the patient takes that helps your liver produce more glutathione. So you want to add more glutathione to your body, and you want your body to produce more of it. And so that's how it's working. So I like that method of detoxification because you're doing it naturally. Most of the chelating products that people are familiar with chelation, the problem is chelation products do not get inside the cell, and they don't get inside the brain. Now, we're all worried about dementia, right, and Alzheimer's. Well, there's a strong tie to mercury causing this stuff in the brain.
Right.
Don't you want something that's going to get in there and get that stuff out? Well, you're not getting it out with a chelation product. And most of the mercury, by the way, is not in the plasma, which is the fluid between your red blood cells. Most of the mercury is in the cell itself. Well, chelation only gets it out of the plasma. It doesn't get in the cell. There's much more in the cell. So I like to work with our bodies. The glutathione and the R-lipoic, they can get anywhere in the body they want to go, and they work. So that's why I'm a fan of doing a detoxification that's natural. It's less expensive. It doesn't mess up your minerals. So that's how I go about my detoxification.
I am on board with everything you're saying, obviously, because you're my dentist and I had the mercury removed by you, and we're very like-minded individuals. And this is one of the reasons that I've decided to do this podcast, to get this information out there, to get people more educated, empower people to make a change that, hey, go to your dentist, find out, is it mercury? Is it 50% mercury, 30% silver? Should they be called mercury fillings or silver fillings?
Right.
Find out. And then, see what he says, and then go find a biological dentist. But what always drives me a little batty is, why are you one of the few good guys? I shouldn't say one of the few good guys. I'm not phrasing this correctly. What is the secret about, you're doing it right, and then yet it's amazing because, like, you share an office with another dentist, and that guy is the polar opposite. Well, and we won't say his name, but it's like,
I think it's a really brainwashing when dentists get out, and I was the same way. When you get out of a dental school setting, everything you're taught you think is gospel. I was in many years ago when I graduated in 1975, and when I did physiology class, they said to me, there was the doctor the professor at the end of the term said, everything I taught you during this term, years from now we're going to find 50% of everything I taught you is not true. Things that are factual that are not true, that we thought were factual at the point, right?
Oh, wow, he said that.
He said 50% is find to be untrue. We just don't know what 50%. So the problem I find with most doctors is that they're not open-minded enough to change. This is a big problem. They're very brilliant, they're very smart, but they have tunnel vision. And something comes at them, and it's a little bit different than what they've been doing all along, and this is the same with dentists too. They're used to doing mercury, they're used to doing metal-based crowns, and they don't want to change. They just want to keep doing things the same way, and because it's still allowed, there's no incentive for them to change, John. I don't see an incentive to make these guys change. I had an associate come in, and I was interviewing him, and after I was done with the interview, I said, do you have any questions of me? And he said, he saw there was a bunch of dental offices in the area, and he said, I want to know how much competition you had. And I said to him, I looked at him, and I said, you see those other offices that are next to you? Those are called your colleagues. That's what I said to him. They're not your competition, and you can't look at it that way. I said, if you're good at what you do, and if you stick to what people will find you out. You can put your sticker anywhere you want. They're going to find you. I have a friend practicing in Pennsylvania, middle of nowhere, and he sees people from all over the world. So if you're practicing, and that's why I believe if you stick to, you track this group of patients, no matter where people beg me to open up in their community. I can go almost anywhere in the country, open up a practice, and I'll probably be busy full time in no time.
Right.
Because there's such a big need for this, and I wish I can get it through. The thing is, there's zero nutrition in medical and dental school, and they're not exposed to this. And like I said, it took an experience in my life to change with one of my children getting sick. Otherwise, I might not be here too.
Yeah.
But maybe it was meant to be, you know?
Maybe, yeah. Do they just not know when they're teaching you this in dental school and medical school? Do they not know? Or is there something more to it?
Here's what I believe. I think I have a brother I have one brother, right? And my brother's a retired dentist. And it's interesting that he put on his license plates to show how much he disliked dentistry. And he's 5 years younger than I am, and he retired 4 or 5 years ago. So I'm already practicing like 8, 9 years past him.
Oh, wow.
And I still love what I do. And he wrote on his license plate, I'm D-U-N, the DDS. I'm done dentist, DDS. See, that's how much he disliked what he did. And so many dentists burn out because I think also you got to remember, dentists are exposed. We have the highest rate of suicide and some of the highest rate of Parkinson's and these other neurological disorders. It makes common sense. The dental profession, the mainstream dentists have such high rates of mercury toxicity. So what we did in our organization, we actually did a test. We took mercury levels of the biological dentist, mercury levels of the general public, and then we tested traditional dentists. And what do you think we found?
All right, so let's back up. So the general public.
The general public, and
you had biological
dentists, and then we had dentists that were traditional.
And
that did mercury fillings.
Right. So what were the percentages?
Our group, the biological dentists, were about the same as the general public.
Okay.
And the other dentists were off the charts. The traditional dentists. And this is what and I try to get through them. So these young girls, they're starting to get it because the word is getting out there. I really believe it's getting out there, and they're getting a little scared. And that's why we're seeing our organization increasing. Here's another interesting thing that shows you a little bit of the attitude of some of the doctors out there is that we have many of these dentists that are placing amalgams in their patients' teeth, yet I see a bunch of them that I know will not place an amalgam, and this included my brother. He wouldn't place an amalgam in my niece's teeth or my sister-in-law's teeth. They all got composite fillings.
Right.
So, if it's good for the goose, it should be good for the gander. Why is it not doing that? Because they know in their heart that this stuff is probably bad.
Yeah.
But it's easier to do. And I think if they just had a basic course and showed them in the school, it's so simple to protect yourself. I mean, the nice thing would be to get rid of it so we stop placing. That's the first step.
That's for sure.
And we're not there yet, unfortunately. Second step would be to teach the dentist how to protect themselves when they remove it, like our protocols.
It's something I haven't thought about, but you're right. The suicide rates of
we're number one by far. Don't even, if you look it up, we're not, and it's all because of mercury. And do you know how sad it is? As I said, I'm in charge of the whole mentor program worldwide for the IAOMT, and I assign mentors, and I personally mentor. I have a lot of people shadow me. They come in, they watch me, and it's so sad to see these. I have young dentists that starting like with Parkinson's and other things and heart disease, and it's tied to mercury.
Young dentists who have Parkinson's already?
Yeah, it's starting to get the shakes and stuff. God. You can't believe what I see, and they're afraid in their own practices to take out an amalgam filling. This is how fearful they are because they realize what they've been doing. Once they usually come into our organization, they take a full day learning about mercury. We have a full day called Mercury 101, and they have a whole day they learn everything there is to learn about mercury.
We need to get enough momentum to just change this, to just get to the point where, because this is not benefiting. Let's use some common sense. In the end, what's happening here? There's mercury in the general public's teeth. That's not good for them. The dentists who put it in.
Not good for the dentist either.
It's not good for them. So the end result, it's not good for anybody.
Right. And nor the staff either, of course.
Right. So the smart method, why not just go and
you know what? When you get good at it, if you would watch me work during the day, my staff, when they see we're doing amalgam removal, they can even, there's something else called a cleanup, which is just a special suction with a 4-sided thing. And that's done by many dentists. And that in itself, even if you had nothing else, no other filters, that will cut your exposure down tremendously to the patient and the dentist both. So, and like, of course, there will be certain teeth that we can't use this raincoat that might be very difficult, say, on a wisdom tooth to get the raincoat on. And we'll use that, it's called, that method, that cleanup is made from Sweden. It's called cleanup.
Okay.
And it's inexpensive. It's a little plastic thing with a little U that goes around, special type of suction, and pulls all the vapors. It's been shown in studies to work very effectively to pull the mercury vapors in. Because the type of mercury that's in the mouth, I'd like to go a little bit into mercury now, since we're talking so much about it.
We'll stay on the mercury. You know what? We can
Let's finish the mercury up real quickly.
Yeah.
So the mercury in the mouth. So basically, I want the public to know there's basically two basic types of mercury. So we have inorganic mercury, and we have organic mercury. The inorganic mercury is the mercury that's you're getting from in your fillings. Inorganic means it's not attached to a carbon molecule. What makes something organic is attached to a carbon molecule. And inorganic mercury, people will call me up and say, Doc, my filling broke, I swallowed it. Am I going to be poisoned? Because remember, the filling's 50% mercury.
Yeah.
And you need only a little dot of this stuff to really cause you health issues. So the answer is probably not, because inorganic mercury, there's only very, very little absorption through the gut. Almost nothing gets absorbed. The only way that you're getting this stuff into you is from the vapors that are coming off the mercury.
The vapors and not the actual mercury
Not
itself?
the pieces, because the pieces don't get absorbed by the gut.
But
Now,
the
if you put it
vapors
into a
will.
real slurry, you get some of that still going into your body. But basically, it's really the exposure of the vapors that's causing you the issue in the body. 80% absorption of those vapors in the lung, throughout your body, to your brain, throughout all your tissues within seconds. This is how quick this thing happens. Boom, like that. Jesus. So it's really scary when you start to study this stuff. That mercury also, we believe, has two binding sites, so it's harder for the body to remove. The body can't break mercury down. It has to escort it out of the body. So when you have a molecule like glutathione,
Right.
it attaches to the mercury and physically attaches itself and then is escorted out through the feces or the urine.
Otherwise, it's not leaving the body.
Otherwise, not leaving, right? It doesn't leave, right? It's just really tacked down tightly.
Wow.
Now let's talk about the other types of mercury, other type of mercury. So that's inorganic. The other type of mercury, and that we by the way, we see that mostly in the liver, and in the we see that mostly. Mostly the kidneys and the urine is the inorganic mercury. Okay.
Okay.
The kidneys and urine. Okay. Now let's talk about the other type of mercury. That's called organic mercury. Organic mercury or methyl mercury. And by the way, the vaccinations are
How many different types of mercury are there?
There's three main types. There's organic, inorganic, and there's pure mercury, right, like on the periodic table.
Okay.
But that quickly reacts and becomes one of the others. So that one is, so when it's vaporizing and coming off that way, it reacts with a body we call ligand, attaches to something in the body, and once this vapor gets right through the blood-brain barrier easily. Then it reacts in the brain, attaches itself to something in the body called the ligand, and now it becomes inorganic mercury, and it cannot pass back out through the blood-brain. So now it's locked into your brain. Wow. So it comes in, it gets in, becomes something else, and now it's locked in. Okay.
Wow.
And so the other form of mercury is organic mercury, or we call methyl mercury, and that mercury is from mostly seafood. Okay, so I have a chart that I always show the patients. If you think about it, the bigger fish, the fish that are the predators that eat the other fish. So shark is number one. The next biggest one would be swordfish, and tuna is up there too, but for everybody. So all you sushi eaters, be really careful. Now I had one of my kids. This was going back a number of years ago when she was in college. She was a big sushi head. She'd be eating sushi 2-3 times a week. And I said to her, sweetheart, I said, this is not a good idea. I said, you're going to have high amounts of mercury from this stuff. And I tested her mercury levels, John, and on the chart they have a scale that goes up to a certain amount. They had to double the scale for her to contain her because her levels were so high.
Yeah. Let me say this. We are not telling people what to eat and what not to eat. What we are saying, because I agree with what you're saying, is be informed, know that there are high levels of mercury in large fish. And if you know that and you want to eat it,
that's your prerogative.
It's
right.
absolutely go for it.
We're educating, and that's what I tell my patients too. I'm not trying to convince you to take your mercury. I don't tell people they have to take the mercury fillings out.
No.
They have to sign it in my practice.
Yeah.
They sign an informed consent if they take out a tooth or if they're taking out their mercury fillings, saying they're doing it of their own accord. I'm not making them do it because I'm not. I'm just here to educate them. I say, here's the research. You make up your own mind. If you want to do it, I'll help you accomplish your goals. That's what it's about.
I think just backing up a little bit, and this is one of the things I want to be very careful about, is pulling the information and not pushing it. We are giving you the information, and I am giving the information on this podcast, but by no means do I want anyone to feel shamed because they eat a certain way, or they don't do this, or they decide that their lifestyle haven't worked out in a week. The idea is to make a change.
Right.
I have started this to make a change, to empower people to be informed. So you're right. It's in tuna, it's in swordfish, it's in sharks, it's in the large fish. And be careful. And I also want to say something about, I pretty much stay away from sushi. I will eat wild fish. Hopefully it really is wild. It's supposed to come from Alaska. That's a whole nother thing. Hopefully it really is. But typically my way of going about things is, if I think it's a troublemaker, potentially I usually just eliminate it.
Well, and you want to have the facts. And one thing I just want to finish up that real quickly, John, that I didn't mention is the reason why it's an issue when you eat the fish, just so the audience understands, is that when you have anything with methyl mercury, organic mercury, which is in these fish, you absorb 90% of that through our gut. There's 90% absorption rate. So whatever's in that fish, we're pulling in 90% of that. Now, listen, if you're healthy, and we can all withstand some of this because we have the glutathione, our body has natural defense mechanisms. I'm not saying you can never have this.
Right.
I'm just saying just give it some thought, be more careful. Maybe you should go to your physician or a biological dentist and have your levels checked and see where you're at. That's something to think about, you know.
I'm telling you, I typically am very clean. And I think because I'm very clean, I'm extra sensitive when I do have tuna. I had sushi 6 months ago, and I felt horrible. Mm-hmm. And there's no coincidence. I'm telling you, I had it, and I had a headache like nobody's business. And it was the sushi, because it becomes you. You're eating it. It becomes your blood. And yeah, go check it out. And if you want to do a little test, you could test the mercury.
Right. And so
how do you test mercury?
That's a good question. So through Chris Shea, the person I told you about before, where we're doing the mercury removal with quicksilverscientific.com, through that he has I think the safest and only effective mercury test out there. We do urine, we do hair analysis, and we do blood, all three.
What's that doctor's name again?
It's Christopher Shade, Shade. And
the method is Quicksilver?
Well, his company. He's a PhD.
Okay.
A chemist. He's not a doctor. He's not a physician.
Okay, gotcha.
But his testing is, I think, the safest testing that's out there, and that's what we utilize for our testing to rely on. And it shows us from that, not only can we tell your mercury levels, but we can also compare to the general public and through the people that are being tested, but we can also tell liver and kidney function, which is really important, because many patients that are tested, they're what we call downregulated or not functioning up to par. And that's another issue. So if you're going to, for example, say, hey, Dr. Berkowitz, I want to do a detoxification. Well, if the kidneys and liver are not functioning properly, you might have trouble going through either my detox or a chelation detox. You might have some issues because your kidneys can't push out any more than you're already putting on them. So you might want to get those
overloaded with.
Right, it's overloaded. So they already have contaminated. So what I do in my practice as a naturopath is we try to get the kidneys, liver, kidney, lymphatics working better. And usually the way I do that is using my homeopathic knowledge. We use homeopathic remedies to get them upregulated, to get them functioning on a higher level. Once we get them functioning higher level, then we do our detoxification.
Right. So they don't just go into
Right, and they don't go into what we call a Herxheimer, or where they start having all these issues where they don't feel good or get diarrhea or this, that. I always say, as a naturopath, slow and low. Start slowly with low doses. There's no need to rush it. We'll get there. Not everybody, because sometimes when you turn things on, even when you're giving someone a supplement like magnesium, which most people are very low on, I tell them, don't just take it all at once. You're going to go very slowly. We're going to gradually tighter you up until you get to the point where you don't get yourself sick.
Right. How does the mercury get into the fish, by the way? I'm actually curious. So these large fish that get the mercury, where are they getting it?
Every lake, think about it. So acid rain and mercury coming up through the atmosphere, every single lake, the lakes are contaminated with mercury. Every single lake in the country. They tested lakes in the most destined areas that are just hard to get
So,
to.
but where's it? Is it coming from
Yeah,
the sky?
from the sky and the runoff from the soil. Because don't forget, they don't filter out mercury from the sewage. You can't really filter it out. And so where does most of the mercury in the United States come from? Two main sources. Comes from the power plants and from dental offices.
Wow.
Okay, so now they finally, after all these years, most people are not aware of this behind the scenes, the EPA mandated that all dental offices use a mercury separator to separate the mercury. Because what's happening is, think about it, when we take the mercury out in a dental office, nobody thinks about this, right? Where does it go? It would normally go right into the sewer. They can't separate it out, so the mercury, we're contaminating our environment with mercury. All this mercury from all these offices all these years,
So
right?
what do you do with it? Like where?
Well,
where
I've
would
always used a separator. So what the separator does is it goes through a special thing that pulls out 99% of the mercury, so I'm not contaminating the environment. And I've had one for many, many years before it was the in vogue thing to do it because I didn't want to contaminate the
But
environment.
still, it gets separated. But
Then
still,
we-
it's got to go somewhere.
Then we have to send out by special courier, and we have to sign off everything. It goes out a special way, and it gets reused again. But
gets-
then it recycled again.
Okay.
Basically but at least it's not contaminating the environment. That's the good news.
Right.
Okay.
My gosh, mercury.
Yeah.
My gosh, this stuff is
Yeah.
is a piece of work. We can go on and on about this.
Yeah. So let's hit another subject because I think we covered that pretty extensively.
I think
get
we
the
did.
idea, right?
I think we did. The next subject we could go on for probably a couple more hours, but we could be here till 1 o'clock in the morning. I think you and I. But let's do it. Fluoride.
Okay. So here's an interesting thing about fluoride that as a naturopathic doctor too, fluoride is a big issue with me too, putting my naturopathic hat on because when we look at what's going on in the United States, we'd probably say, I'd say 35-40% of the population are hypo or low thyroid functioning, where the TSH levels, the thyroid stimulating hormone levels are higher, which means your thyroid is not functioning, it's not putting out enough. And so, things like hair loss, slow metabolism, being cold all the time, these are things of hypothyroid, at least fatigue, no energy. These are things that, because the thyroid controls your energy. So so hypothyroid is a big issue. Now,
Sort of like a sloth. Right?
so for the thyroid to work, when people look at thyroid hormone, something called T4 thyroxine, the 4 stands for 4 molecules of iodine, John. Okay, and so iodine is a very important supplement, and I do iodine testing as a naturopath too. But we'll get not really. And the reason I want to mention this is that fluoride and bromine. If you look on the periodic table, remember that old periodic table in chemistry. If you look at there's something called halogens, and as you can see, fluoride, bromine, iodine, and chlorine. They're all in a row.
Okay.
Okay, they're all halogens. Okay, and they all very similar structure, and they all compete with iodine for the binding site in the thyroid as well as the cells. So when you have too much fluoride, the fluoride prevents the iodine from binding in. So that's problem number one, is that now your thyroid many times is not going to work from having high levels of fluoride. And by the way, fluoride is found in, besides fluoride treatments in the dental office, looking at it dentally, fluoride treatments, high amounts of fluoride in fluoride treatments. And I don't know of a single study, isn't it another interesting thing, there's not a study that I know of anywhere in the world that fluoride, systemic fluoride stops tooth decay. You would think this is what we're taught in dental
There's
school, right?
no
study that I know of that fluoride stops tooth decay anywhere. Now, fluoride does work on a local basis on the enamel to make it more resistant to decay. But you got to say, is it worth the...
What about sensitivity? Does
well,
it reduce sensitivity?
it reduces sensitivity to teeth. Yes, fluoride's
Okay.
another thing. Dentists used to rub fluoride into the root to burnish it in. It works
So
to
there
do
are
that.
some benefits.
Right, and they used to have these cavity varnishes and a lot of the different materials. So, but I tell the patients too, I did an article on this years ago. I said, fluoride treatments is not the only source of fluoride in the office. So even if you go into, I just want to make patients educated. And I'm not saying you have to do this, but just so you know that there's fluoride. Besides the fluoride treatments, most of the dentists will use fluoride in the prophy paste, in the prophylactic paste. When they prophy your teeth with the toothpaste, that is fluoride based for most offices. Fluoride in other dental materials, like there's a material called the glass ionomer, which is a common material to fill deciduous or baby teeth, as well as medicated bases for permanent teeth. Fluoride is in that too. And so there's other sources of fluoride, and some fluoride in some of these desensitizers that dentists use have fluoride in it. So there's a lot of different sources. There's a paste I use for for hardening the enamel called MI paste, which is a remineralizing paste. But they also have an MI plus. The plus is for fluoride. I won't use the plus because there's a fluoride in it. So there's some issues. Now, if you look up toxic effects of fluoride, if anybody looks on the internet, two of the main things you're going to see is lowers children's IQ.
Let me ask you this question.
Yeah.
Here's the question when it comes to fluoride, mercury, organic versus non-organic, you name it. Because now that we have the internet and Google and you can look up all this stuff, it becomes, you can look up study after study after study until you're like, Looney Tunes. Where can I find a legitimate study? Let's just say that I said, okay, you know what? I'm going to have an open mind. I really want to know about fluoride. I want to look for myself and decide if this is a neurotoxin or if this is okay. It's just a bunch of crap.
I would again refer you to our website because we have a tremendous amount. We have some of the leading anti-fluoride people in the world that are in our group.
And the website is
IAOMT.org. Same thing like I said before. IAOM like in Mary, T like in Tom, T.org. They will have they have they have a tremendous amount. We have a whole research library. You'll have mercury. You'll have fluoride on there, and you can do plenty of research and see what's going on with this stuff.
And these studies were done by unbiased researchers.
Oh yeah, of course.
They had no skin in the game. There's nothing.
No, and there's overwhelming is the word. I mean, I said mercury. I've never seen anything with more research than you could have. I mean, it's beyond. You just there's no way you can kind of go against this, in my opinion, because there's so much research worldwide. And the same thing with fluoride too. So the fluoride, is an issue. And as I said, the things that I know associated, I was saying before, is it lowers children's IQ and makes brittle bones. Those are two of the biggies that you'll see on the internet if you look it up. And patients have to make their own decision, but it's something that I myself try to avoid in my practice.
How do we get? Would you be, for the dentists and the people who are listening to this, would you be willing to, I mean, other than going to IAOMT.org and you're going to get a lot of information, but what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get other dentists to become biological dentists. And I'm trying to think about how do we do that? Because I know, like humans, we don't like change. I just got a new phone, and I got to be honest with you, I'm not too happy about it because I didn't like change.
Yeah, right,
I had a phone for 3.5 years. I was used to the phone, and now I had to get another one. It was the process was like a pain in the neck, and it's like everything's different now, and I'll get used to it. I'm a big boy, I'll live, but I didn't like the change. So the thing here is that you're used to a certain way of going about things. You use fluoride, you use Crest toothpaste, you do mercury. You're taught to do that. How do we get these people?
And it's been our organization's been around for over 25 years, and we've been asking this question to ourselves too as an organization, how to do this. And I think what we're going about it now is the smartest way, because I think the way to do this is actually to educate the public.
Okay.
By the SMART protocol, the safe mercury amalgam removal technique. Get that out there. Let people realize that this stuff, we have some of the leading scientists in the world, and once they start asking their dentist for this and say, hey, I heard about this and I'd like to have my fillings done, that's how you'll get. When dentists realize that patients are going to maybe leave their practice to go to someone that will be willing to do this, they might wake up and start to do this stuff. And hopefully if they get educated, or even if they usually any dentist that comes to one of our meetings, by just a weekend meeting, they're converted. Because you will not walk out of there believing that this stuff is safe. You're blown away when you see it's real science. This is no Mickey Mouse stuff. This is real. We have some of the best scientists in the world. We have Dr. Boyd Haley, who's the leading expert on mercury in the world. He's the head of our scientific board. So we have some serious scientists on our board of directors.
So to recap, we talked about biological dentistry, which you are a great one of the best. You taking new patients?
Yes, we're still taking patients.
Dr. Mark Berkowitz.
I'll be training an associate very shortly, so we're going to be able to open it up for new patients.
Do we want to give out your number?
Well, just tell them where my practice is. They can come. You can welcome to give out my number. But my practice is in Morganville, New Jersey, and
732. I don't know the number off heart.
591-1112.
Get in there, see him, and if you're not local, look up biological dentistry. Find a biological dentist.
Right.
Ask questions. Go to the website IAOMT.org. Look up the studies for yourself on fluoride and mercury removal. If you have mercury in your teeth, you didn't do anything wrong. We're not telling you to take it out, but what we're saying is look at it. Maybe it's an issue, maybe it's not. And now you know there's a safe method of getting it removed, and that's an option. Now that you have the information, we're going to empower you to make the change. Mm-hmm. And that's pretty much a wrap. I pretty much, not pretty much, I loved having you on the podcast.
It was fun.
I think we could be here.
Yeah, we could do it again.
We did Mercury for 1 hour. We could go on.
We got a lot of other subjects, ozone and some of the other amazing things we do. So there will be a lot of fun to.
We didn't even get close. We could have just kept going for Mercury.
It's a big field. That's why I said it's not a one-issue thing. There's a huge amount of stuff that we do, and it's a whole change. I'm in my own little world, literally, and because what I do is quite so different than most offices do.
But let's change that. I don't want you to be lonely in that world.
I'm
in your world
not,
a little bit too.
And that's why I'm involved in the mentor program, and that's why I have people that shadow me. I'm always trying to wake people. I mean, I had a girl that was on trying to decide whether she was going to do this or not. She spent the day with me. She walked out and said, "Oh my God, I can't wait to get back to my office and start doing this." So. I'm beautiful. More than willing, if there's a dentist out there listening to this and you would like to learn this or call me, feel free. I'm always happy to get on the phone, and you're happy to hang out with me for the day. More than happy to do that with any professional.
That's great. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for all your knowledge. You're a superstar.
Thanks, John. My appreciation.
We got to do this again. We'll get you back.
Okay, thanks again.
All right. Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay, you got it. Bye-bye.